Alright, so imaginary numbers is the last thing that we have to learn before our test. So, we have here, the thing that you have to remember is that the square root of -1 is I. Alright, so the thing that up until this point you guys probably found out is that you can't take the square root of a negative number. However, they found that if they work with imaginary numbers, they can work with, they had advancements in acoustics, electricity. They also use imaginary number of the computer generated drawings. So imaginary numbers are things that are very important. So if you go into those three fields, you will study imaginary numbers more in depth. But we're only going to learn a little bit about imaginary numbers. So the thing that we have to know is that, we'll do a couple examples and I'll go back to it. So example 1. The square root of -16. The first thing that you want to do is you want to always think about what is the square root of a negative number. And so what is the square root of, and you have to always think of this as just the negative, because you can think of this as -1 times 16, but what is the square root of the negative? The square root of your negative is I. Square roots of 16. The I just comes out to be, the negative just comes out to be an I. So what is the square root of 16? 4. So we have 4I.
Well, it's going to be I4. No.
Yes, the I, it should be written
Lowercase.
like lowercase, and it should have a curly tail. If you, I know some people write like this, but it really should have a tail to it, because it's an imaginary number. So
I can do that.
all right,
What
the
is
square
that?
root of -81. That is 9I. So we have here, what? Oh, so right here we have the square root of negative is your I, and the square root of 81 is 9. So our 9I. Whoops.
I hate these eyes.
Those eyes are beautiful.
All right. Try one more before we add the next step. So, the square root of -20. We have to still remember the stuff that we learned from before. But the first thing you want to always do is take out the negative. So what is the square root of a negative? I. Then you can go and break down 20. So you have the square root of 4 times 5. Square root of 4 is 2. And then we always put our I, square roots of 5.
Why did you do that though?
Why do I do what? Break it down?
Yeah.
This is so, there's things called exact numbers, and there's, like if you put it into a decimal, that's approximation. When they want exact values, you want to keep, that's why you have to keep it into this, because this is an exact value. Because square root of 20 doesn't have, if you put it into your calculator, it's a decimal. So that's why you break it down.
Oh, and then
So,
you
like,
got 2I because the square root
because the
of 4 is 2, right?
Yep, the square root of 4 is 2.
Yeah, and then you obviously put the I there because you put the I out there.
Yep, because of the I is from that.
Yeah, okay,
Yep.
I get it.
All right. So the next thing that I have to let you know is that I squared. First of all, we have the square root of a -1. What was the square root of a -1? Did I just tell you? Is I. So if I squared I and I squared this side, what would it be? -1. So I squared is -1. If I squared this side and I squared this side, the 2 would cancel out, leaving it with negative 1. So I squared is equal to negative 1. All right. Example 4. 2 minus 3i squared. What does this mean? What does 2 minus 3i squared mean? So you go 2 minus 3i times 2 minus 3i. Might be all hour. I don't know. We'll see. So
That's better than doing homework.
I don't know. So the first thing that you want to do is you take this 2 and you multiply it by 2. So 2 times 2 gives me 4. Then I take the 2 to multiply it by the negative 3i, so that gives you a negative 6i. Still the same thing, I'm taking this negative 3i, multiply by the 2, which gives me negative 6i. Negative negative is a positive. 3 times 3 is 9. And then we have I squared. What is I times I? Is I squared. All right.
Because you did negative 3 times negative 3, right?
It'd be I times I. Yep. That's right. All right. We must remember something that we just learned. What is I squared? Negative 1. So we have 4 minus 6i. Oh yeah, 12i. I could have done that. 6i. And then we have plus 9 times my negative 1. I'm trying to show you guys all the steps so you know where I'm getting things from. Yeah? Okay. So we have here 4, negative 6i, and a negative 6i gives me how many i's? Negative 12i. And 9 times negative 1 is negative 9. One last step. Now I will tell you that some of you probably already got to this, but we have 4 minus 9. Negative 5 minus 12i. Now, these are called complex numbers. Right here we have a complex number.
What's the answer?
Yeah, it's called a complex number because it has real numbers, and reals always come first, so reals, and then we have our imaginary.
Are we done?
No.
Of course not.
Of course not.
Are you just pulling stuff out of your butt?
Yeah, I'm making it up as I go.
AKA pulling it out of the butt.
All right. Anybody not have this one done? All right. Example 5.
Scraping.
Huh?
All right. Oh. Before we go to example 5, I got to tell you one more thing. No. But I do have to tell you something before we get to the last example. Shh. Before we get to the last example, I need to tell you something. So, remember that I is equal to the square root of negative 1. But we also say that, which hopefully you agree, that I equals I. Alright? We also said that I squared equals negative 1. Watch this, ladies and gentlemen, because this is where the last part that you got to make sure you understand about imaginary numbers.
Yeah,
I
perfect
cubed.
time.
Let me pause this
Love
for a little bit. Alright, so I cubed, hopefully you guys agree that I times I squared, make sure you listen, watch. I times I squared is I squared, just don't worry about this side, worry about this side. I times I squared is I I cubed, right? I times I squared is I cubed. So that means I cubed equals I times negative 1, which is negative I. It's very,
So nuts.
the last number in imaginary, there's only 4.
Oh wait. I cubed equals negative I.
Yes. The last number is right here. I to the 4th. I to the 4th. What can we rewrite this as? And I'm going to tell you, I'm going to go with I squared as a real number. I squared times I squared. Right? So we have, because that's 4. What is I squared? Negative 1 times negative 1, which gives me 1. You can figure out how to get these numbers, or you can memorize them. It's up to you. This is the only numbers that exist in imaginary numbers. But what happens when I say example 5? When I say, what is I to the 14th?
Can't type there.
All right. So the first thing you have to do is think about. You have to think about. Thinking about is in the 4th. How many i's to the 4th do we have? So you go 14 divided by 4. So we have I to the 4th. How many of these do we have? 4 goes into 14 how many times?
4, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 30.
3 times, right? 3 times. So there's 3 of these. And I'm going to show you a secret in a moment. There's 3 of these. How many's left over?
I did do it by 4.
Because I to the 4th is 1.
Okay.
So there are 2 left over, right? So I squared, though, is negative 1. So these are all 1, so it's negative 1. I want to show you a secret.
I don't understand.
Okay, do you get first of all, do you get 14 can be written as in I to the 4th, I to the 4th, I to the 4th, and I squared. We have 4 and 4 is 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14. All right, I'm breaking them up into 4s because I know that I to the 4th is 1. So this is 1 times 1 times 1 times negative 1. 1 times that is negative 1, right? Now, watch this. This is how easy this really is. 4 goes into 14, we said 3 times. 3 times 14 is?
3 times
3 times 4 is?
12.
12. So we have 2 left over. Our remainder is the number it is. So 1, 2 down is negative 1. So if you find your remainder, that's where it is. Or you can simply count, which I'll tell you don't want to do that. But 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, negative 1. Because it just keeps repeating each time. So our answer is negative 1. So you can either take and find the remainder and count down, or you can set it up into that category. All right, because it keeps going down each time. All right.
No more examples?
Nope, but I'm going to give. Number 7, you have, the first thing you do is take out that negative. The square root of the negative is, Kelsey?
Square root of the negative is half.
Is I. The square root of a negative is I. Then we have to take the square root of your 1/4. So remember, whenever you're taking the square root of 1/4, you take the square root of the top, which square root of 1 is? 1. The square root of 4 is 2. Now, this is the trick, guys. When you have fractions, you can either put the I on the top or the I next to it. It doesn't matter. So it can go up there, or it can go 1/2 I. That's the same thing. But just so you know, we don't leave. Once you always have your real number in the front of the I. Just like you'd never say x2, you'd say 2x. You'd never say x 1/2, you'd say 1/2 x. So you can say 1/2 I or I over 2, but one of these two would be the thing that you'd have. Number 8. Number 8 we have here as a negative. You bring that negative. Square root of a negative is I.
And then the top's gonna be 3.
And then we have square root of 9
3.
and square root of 100. Yes, Nick?
If you had,
Oh, let me finish this problem then if you're going to another one. So you have negative I times 3 gives me
Negative 3i.
negative 3I over 10.
So you multiply the negative I by the 3,
Yep, because you're just going negative I times 3.
and then move the bottom.
Yep. On a fraction, you always multiply tops. Yep. All right, Nick, now go ahead. Number
like number 16.
16.
You have 2i.
Very good. All right, number 16, ladies and gentlemen.
But you have I squared.
You will in a second, yep. So the first thing you want to do is you pull out your negatives. So the square root of a negative is I. So we have this. So you have I square root of 12
Times I squared.
times I square root of 3. We good so far? I times I is I squared. Because it's just like x. Oh, okay. Square root of 12 times the square root of 3. What's 12 times 3? 36. What is the square root of 36? 6. What is I squared? Close. Negative 1. So I squared is negative 1. And square root of 36 is 6. So it's negative 6. I will tell you that the 18 through 24 are the easiest ones. And so we'll do a couple of those, and if
Number 11 or 12.
11 or 12, oh, yep. 2I times 3. 2 times 3 is 6I. Yep. So it would be negative 6, but I times I would be I squared. But what is I squared? Negative 1. So you have negative 6 times negative 1, so it's just 6.
Number 13.
So what is the square root of a negative?
It's I.
I. So we have I squared to 2 times 5I. Look at it however you want to look at it, but when you're multiplying, so you're multiplying your I times I, which gives me
I squared.
I squared.
Okay, so it's gonna be 1.
That's going to be negative 1, yeah. And 5 times the square root of 2 is
10. Oh,
5 square root of 2. Whenever you have a whole number with a radical, the only thing you can do is put them together.
okay.
So negative 5.
So this is your negative 1. Wait, what?
Why the I goes to 2?
Okay, see the negative there?
Yeah.
So what's this,
I radical 2.
right?
And times 5I. So when it's 5I.
You combine like
times
terms.
I.
You're multiplying like terms.
Yeah, why can't you multiply I with the square root? No.
Say it again. Nope, the I is in the front. The square root of a negative number is I, and it comes out in the front.
Just
The reason why you can't multiply 5 times the square root of 2, okay, because you're saying 10.
Why can't you
Just wait, I got 2 questions. Say your question first.
Like, why can't you multiply 5i and
There's a radical.
You are multiplying, but the only thing you're doing is you're multiplying I times I, which is I squared.
There's a radical over the 2 though.
Yep, and there's because there's a square root over the 2, you can't, like, 5, it'd be like timesing 5 times x. It'd be 5x. So these 2 are not like terms, so it just goes in front of it. If it's 2 times 5, then it'd be 10. But since it's radical 2, since, like, when you do these, like, when you do the square root of 2 times the square root of 10, they're both under radicals, so you can multiply. But if it's not, then it just becomes that. So let's finish. Did you, no, what was your question?
So the answer is 5 square root of 2i squared.
But what is I squared? I had to get you this, I had to get everyone this far, but what is I squared? Negative 1. So 5 square root of 2 times negative 1 is negative 5 square roots of 2. Let's try 14.
I would have been negative 5. You just
Um,
automatically multiply
what's-
with 1.
Yep, because this means this just means 5 times the square root of 2 times I squared. When it's next to each other, it means multiplication. So because they're next to each other, that means multiplication. And what does I squared equal? Negative 1. So these 2 are the like terms now again.
Oh yeah.
So 5 times negative 1 is a negative 5. Yes, Josh.
What I did was I just read it, like I got what you did from what I read from 2 times 5i. Like I got that.
I squared.
Yeah, I did it different though.
But did you get I squared? You said I.
What
Okay.
I did was I did 5i times I to get 5i squared.
Uh-huh.
And then I squared is negative 1, so I just did negative 5 times negative 1. And I got,
So you went I squared 2 times 5i. You went 5i times I,
and I got 5i squared.
and you left your square root.
Yeah, right, 2. And then I squared equals negative 1, so I did 5 times negative 1.
Right. Yep. You can definitely do this because remember, it's the same thing as saying 3 times 2 times 5. I can multiply this and then multiply it by 5, or I can multiply this and multiply it by 3. So that's all you did, is you just rearranged them. This is just I times this times this times that. You can definitely do it that way, and it will always work. All right, let's try number 14. What is the square root, Hannah, what's the square root of a negative? I. So I have I square roots of 5, 8i, just bringing them down. This means that we're going I times the square root of 5 times 8 times the square root of 5. Now you can rearrange it just like Josh said he did, like he did last time. You can rearrange it so that, because remember these are all just multiplications. So if you wanted to, you can rearrange it 8 times I times the square root of 5. If that helps you rearrange them. All you're doing, because this is I times this times that, so you can rearrange them. Then your I squared,
But what if you have to have a minus in there?
where is the subtraction sign in the first? There's no
Sorry. I don't know.
there's no subtraction sign, so
It just looked like that one was.
mm-mm.
It looked like you wrote it.
No, they're all multiplication. So I times I is I squared, which is negative 1. So you have negative 8 square roots of 5. Yes, no? All right. Adding and subtracting, what you do is you just have to add and subtract like terms. So 5i plus a negative 10i. Negative 5i.
Whoa.
Oh.
What?
Think of it being x. If I had 5x plus a negative 10x,
Yeah.
what would that be?
69.
Nope.
Negative 10, I'm sorry. 5.
Nope.
What?
Negative what?
You said a 5 and a negative 10, right?
So we have 5x or 5i
Yeah.
plus a negative 10i.
So, oh. It'd be negative 5i. Yeah. Oh,
Okay.
negative.
Distribute, when you have this, distribute your negative first. So we have 2 plus 3i, and the negative we have goes to each one of these. So you have negative 6, negative negative is a positive I. Combine like terms.
So 4i.
So 4i. 2 minus 6 is
Negative 4.
negative 4. Put the negative first, or the real number first. If you don't, you'll have to just rewrite it. If you put 4i minus 4, then you just rewrite it, because reals come first.
So is that right?
Negative 4 plus 4i.
That's the answer?
That's right. That's the answer. Alright. So try to do the... Is there any on the front side that you need me to do? Or look at?
Wait.
Nice back.
So how'd you get the negative 4 plus 4i?
Did you get this? Did you get the negative 6 plus I? Okay. Combine like terms. 2 minus 6 is...
Distribute that one thing all the parentheses as well.
Once you distribute this, yeah. If it's plus, you can just drop the parentheses, because it's 1. Because it's subtraction is not. Alright. So, and on the back side, especially the multiplication ones, you should be able to do part of it. So what I want you to do is I want you to, as long as you're working throughout the hour, I might give you time tomorrow, but we'll see how it is. But some of you are already done, I take it. What I want you to do though is to make sure you're working throughout the hour. Just a sec.